This video is brought to you by CuriosityStream. The Athlon 200GE is a $55 Euro whatever dual-core with integrated Vega graphics that I made a long video for LowSpecGamer standards, gushing about how I could run almost anything on this. So now, I want to do something a little bit more extreme.
Hey, this is the third video you make using this? Is this just an Athlon channel now?
I am excited for a new piece of hardware for the first time in a while. Do not ruin this for me. Where was I? Oh yeah. Can this cheap low-end APU play games in 4K? I actually did something of this nature on this collab that I had with Box, comparing low-end GPUs in 4K, one of my favorite videos currently on the channel. And even though I do not own a 4K monitor, I still have this precious piece of hardware that I got to capture footage for that video, so I got curious. Those two GPUs were significantly more powerful than this integrated GPU, and 4K is a lot of pixels to render, so is this possible on any game at all? To answer that question, I started the good old Half-Life 2. Look at how tiny this text is in 4K. I intended to use some of my tweaks from the Half-Life 2 video if needed, but boy were my expectations shattered. What you are seeing here is triple-digit performance, or at least over 60 on Half-Life 2 on full 4K resolution. Not bad even if it's an old game. Jumping up the ladder, we're going to try Portal 2, lowest settings and 4K. Well, we're no longer seeing 3 digits. I think that last example set some impossible expectations. The game still performs very well, with a fluid performance that is at least over 30 FPS at all moments. Again, this is full 4K, this is pretty impressive. I did a video a long time ago on some of the console commands that could graphically destroy this game, so I thought of applying some of that, which was more difficult than I expected. Man, these games were really not designed for 4K. And after radically transforming the game, we got some of that over 60 FPS awesomeness back. Full 4K, over 60 FPS. Another classic that I wanted to at least try is Fallout 3 on the lowest settings, a game that in towns at least manages to keep over 30 FPS most of the time. There is also a lot of things you can do graphically on this game, and if you apply them all, the same scene does not get as immediate of a boost as I did expect, but it does average higher when more elements are loaded. Again, just like in Portal 2, these extremes are not needed to play in 4K. So one more game to that working list. Now, I wanted to push the boundaries of this thing, see how far I could get before things stop being properly playable. Counter-Strike Global Offensive is the next step on that road. This game has always been an interesting case study because while still a source game, it has been updated frequently and has way less stuff to tweak around in terms of increasing performance. The result is a surprisingly sharp contrast where I cannot reach 20 FPS in 4K, even though it's almost there. It is worth commenting that while the game's new UI, Panorama, was reported as being more performance efficient for most people, when pushed to these extremes it does seem to actually cause more harm than good. In parallel, you have the example of Team Fortress 2, which has not changed as much during that time, at least in terms of performance, but that continues to host an important player base. The performance was less stable in this one, but mostly enough to play most of the time. Some of the first videos I made on this channel were on this game, and I don't think they're still valid. Is this a game I should return to and see if it can be pushed any further on this day and age? Poll in the corner, I will be checking the results. Finally, I wanted to push my luck and at least try one Unreal Engine 3 game, so I settled for Bioshock Infinite, mainly because it has a benchmarking tool. Hey, you try playing through a capture card that adds like half a second of input delay in 4K, this is not easy. Bioshock Infinite allows a really dramatic graphical reduction through a set of pretty standard Unreal Engine 3 config file modifications, but even with all of that, the benchmark was just shy of 20 FPS? Not quite there. But given the circumstances of the hardware I'm using, this is significantly more than I expected. So, should you buy an Athlon 200GE to play in 4K? Probably not. If you own a 4K monitor, you're unlikely to go for something like an Athlon, but can the Athlon do 4K? Yes, on certain generations of games, and sometimes very well when coupled with the proper RAM, and if you harness that power to do something like 720, you can get away with a lot of gaming. But hey, I had to try, and I'm willing to bet that you did not expect some of these results. And if entry-level hardware can play some games in 4K, it can definitely enjoy full 4K content, especially if that content is high-quality, super interesting documentaries like this hour-long piece on Mont Saint-Michel. Okay, that I completely butchered that. A fortified medieval island in Normandy that left such an impact on me that I'm actually planning to visit next summer. Look at this place, I have seen fantasy settings that are less cool. If you also want to watch documentaries that will leave an impression, you should try CuriosityStream, this video sponsor, where you can watch tons of amazing, addictive stuff on your PC, TV, phone, and so on. If you do not feel like spending anything at all, they have a great selection of free content, but if you want to access the whole repertoire, it's $2.99 a month for HD and $9.99 for 4K, and the first 30 days are absolutely free if you use the link down below and the checkout code LowSpecGamer. Thank you to them for sponsoring this video and for providing such a valuable service, and you for watching. If you have reached the end, you get to listen to this week's secret bad joke. How do you call a French Nintendo Wii? A Nintendo Yes. If you know any gaming or tech jokes, leave them as comments.